And welcome to Around the Ozark Spotlight. Each week we uncover the stories behind the people who live and work here in Southwest Missouri. Those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others or even put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meyer. Today we're going to explore the world of discovery. I was really looking forward to saying that. Discovery, because you've got to say it that way. And I'm speaking with Rob Blevins. And Rob, normally I would give a rundown on your professional title, but with all the changes at Discovery Center here in Springfield, especially these past couple of years, I'm not sure what to call you anymore. What should I call you?
Well, a friend, because I feel like we're friends.
We are good friends, absolutely.
For a long time. So call me that above something professional any day of the week. I guess technically my title is executive director, but that means very little to most people outside of the nonprofit world. It's the equivalency of a CEO role, and that title will probably eventually change over so that people understand what that means. But I'm over the entire operations.
Well, this is the point in the broadcast and podcast where I gotta build you up big time because you deserve that. But I've known Rob, for about 8 years now. I think you were the marketing director at the time for Big Brothers Big Sisters. But since that time, and you kind of had a shining star even then when I first met you. I said, this guy's obviously going to go someplace because he's got more chops than simply being a person in charge of marketing. And here you are, the executive director of Discovery Center. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit, because I don't think we've ever really shared it about your background. And when I say your background, you grew up in rural Missouri, fair?
Rural Virginia first.
Oh, rural Virginia. I'm sorry. Okay.
Appalachia, in fact, on the side of a mountain.
Is that right? So you're
apple fields, cornfields, cow fields, and mountains.
You and Dolly Parton have a little something in common then, right?
Yeah, BFFs actually.
Oh, there you go. But right, big family, not a lot of money. You're not. Everybody likes to throw out the word privilege these days, but you certainly weren't from a privileged background.
Yeah. As a kid, you think of wealth as your family in that sort of environment. So at a certain age, I realized that we were poor. But at first you're just a kid, right? You don't realize, one of the ways that I like to explain it, you know how poor you are when other kids start telling you how poor you are too. So that's a good litmus test of where you stand with things like that.
Now, how many siblings?
I'm one of 8.
One of 8. Okay. So you were not wealthy people, and you had 8 kids in the family. What did your parents do?
So my mom stayed home with us because, childcare with 8 kids is not possible to pay. Well, some salaries out there, I guess, could pay for 8 kids in childcare at the same time, kind of thing. But my dad worked a little bit for, he worked for IBM growing up, but they had a contract with Walmart in Virginia. That's what he did ever since I could remember. He would work on their cash registers and all their different equipment. They outsourced that to IBM early on, and then Walmart took that on internally. And so his job was eliminated. And that's when we had the opportunity to transfer to Illinois, somewhere in Texas, and Springfield, Missouri. You can probably guess which one he chose out of the 3.
That's probably smart.
Then, I'm Des Moines, Iowa is where it was going to be. And no shade going to Des Moines, but I am happy that it was Springfield. I love this city. Obviously, I've chosen to stay here and continue to plant roots and try to make this community better. It's important to me.
A quick sidebar, Rob. Back in the day, I was approached about a media job in Des Moines. And so the wife and I sat down with an atlas that goes back to show you how long ago that was. There wasn't an internet, and looked at Des Moines and looked at cities that were close, because we thought, you're in the middle of a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. What's life going to be like? We were living in Minneapolis, and all we could find was Omaha and Denver, and they were each 4 or 5 hours by car to get to, and decided not to do the Des Moines thing. So I totally understand that. But here you are in Southwest Missouri, a part of a big family. Did you go to college? And if so, where?
I did. I went to Missouri State. So, college wasn't an expectation in the family. That wasn't something that I was actually the first child out of the 8. I'm the second youngest. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, even being the second youngest.
Sure.
But
Congratulations.
well, I mean, because of that, I think you know a little bit about my passion for mentoring, but I had a good mentor, my older brother, Scott. He's 5 years older than me. He is still my mentor in life. But he sat me down and told me, he actually tricked me. It's a pretty funny story. He said, "Hey, let's go to Steak and Shake and get some like chili cheese fries." I'll take that offer. So I was probably like, 14, 15 at that time. So we sit down and he's like, "Hey, you're going to college and you're going to get scholarships and you're going to send me all your grade cards from now on are coming to me. And we are going to make sure that you go to college." And he followed through with it. He was very active. Even in college, I sent my grade cards to him. I was required to do
Is that your older brother?
My older brother. So
be darned.
Everything I've ever achieved, including going to college and having that forced upon me, is because of him. So yeah, I went to Missouri State. I had lots of scholarship opportunities outside of that. Arizona State was one where I had like a $25,000 a year scholarship. St. Louis University. I was planning on becoming an attorney.
Sure.
So looking at all these different universities. Missouri State had the best offer, and I couldn't pay the, SLU was still at that time in 2004, like $50,000 a year. And so my huge scholarship, I opened it up, got it in the mail and was like super excited about it, but then realized how much I still had to pay out of pocket. Missouri State was not my first choice. I viewed it as a party school, and I was a serious academic, right? I was going to law school.
Right.
I mean, it's prestigious. And
well, we know lawyers don't party.
Definitely not.
Definitely
None
not.
ever.
Right.
So it was the second choice, third choice, zero choice, but I mean, it was free. So I went there, and actually I found out pretty quickly that it had one of the best technical writing programs in the country. And all the attorneys I talked to said, like, go English, don't go political science, don't be different. You don't get into Juilliard by playing the piano really well. Right. Some people do, but they're the very, very best piano players in the entire world. You go by playing a different instrument for your tryout. So that's what the way they described it to me. And so, yeah, I went to Missouri State for my undergrad in professional technical writing, and then stayed and completed a master program in the same track.
My guest today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight, someone who I really, really, truly appreciate because he's a good person, and that's Discovery Center's Executive Director, Rob Blevins. Rob, did Scott go to college? Did your brother go to college?
He went to OTC for part of a semester and then dropped out of that. Yeah.
So was he kind of living vicariously through you, or is he just a really good person, or a little bit of both, maybe?
Both. I mean, he learned lessons, and he was always doing that for me growing up, actually. If he learned a lesson, he tried to teach me it by telling me it and explaining it to me, and so that I wouldn't have to make the same mistakes he made. Of course, that didn't always work. Sometimes I had to learn the lessons the hard way, but the lessons that he was able to share with me that way, I think, were really valuable.
Now, you're also a very blessed individual. You've got a beautiful wife and family. Let's talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, so Shelby, my wife, she is getting ready to hopefully start PA school. We have 3 kids, so this is a little bit later in life that she's approaching that. Most people go straight out of college into a program like that. Sure. But we built a family and made sacrifices, both of us. And so it's not always been about what is best for us or what we want to do. So she'll be starting that. I've got Jack, who's 9. He's my sports kid, that kind of piece of me. And he plays football, basketball, baseball. Sometimes he's on 2 teams during a season.
Sure.
Just lives for sports. And then Knox, who's 5, and he's more of my geeky side. He's going to play flag football this fall. The first foray into sports is happening finally. But he really loves like Legos and Minecraft, and he's, wants to be a scientist, and
sure,
he's got that piece of me. And then Bristol, my 3-year-old, Lord help the world. She's about to turn 4. At a young age, I started calling her Senator Blevins because she's not a princess. She's she's got the chops to become a U.S. senator if she wants to.
Great.
She's brilliant, talented, and really good at working people.
Is that right?
So yeah, she's a manipulator, and so yeah, U.S. senator all the way.
Well, that'll be interesting when Dad has to open the door the first time to that boy that she's talked about at the dinner table, and it'll be the first time you guys meet. You'll be able to size him up in a hurry.
Yeah, I'll say good luck. That's
great.
Let me
That's
know
great.
if you ever need advice, son.
You know what's interesting, Rob, is because you came from a family of a few means and fought your way through school and got to the position you're in now. Had you gone down the road of being a lawyer or something along those lines, certainly the money would have been better. But you chose your path in helping others, and I think that's really interesting. At what point did that click in your head that you wanted to do the nonprofit work as opposed to getting on the I guess the hamster cycle and chasing the big dollars?
Gosh, that was a really tough decision. I really dedicated a lot of my life. I minored in legal studies. I worked at a law firm. I helped write an article for a law review. I was really down this lawyer path, and part of working at it, I wanted to be a big corporate attorney. I'd never even been to Chicago, but I wanted to work on Michigan Avenue, big corporate attorney on Michigan Avenue. That was like my dream kind of thing. And then I just realized, that corporate attorney wasn't really the path I wanted to go down. I wanted to be a different kind of person, individual, and have more time for my community and things like that. So I went off that path, and eventually I was using my degree in professional technical writing, working at Jack Henry & Associates. Great company, awesome culture, fantastic benefits, pay, position, people, all those things. And I joined this club called Springfield Sertoma Club. And I was helping put on like chili cook-off. That's one people have probably heard of. I was the media stage manager for that. I was the co-chair of Wingapalooza. I'd invented my own charity event called Springfield Prom. I was spending all of my nights and weekends helping raise money for primarily Boys and Girls Club, but 20 other children's charities as well. And I realized that helping children was the thing that made me happy. I was happiest at night and on the weekends doing all this work, this volunteer work. And I had a friend at the time that was working at Big Brothers Big Sisters, Tyler Moles, and he was like, you could become a full-time do-gooder, as he called it. And
Tyler's always the consummate salesman, I tell you. He's a good one too.
It was a good sale. It was a good pitch. Sure. And, so I started looking at different jobs at different nonprofits. And finally, I remember messaging him one night. They had a position there at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I messaged him. I was like, "What do you think, man? Tell me about this position." He's like, "Well, right now it's not good enough for you. Let me talk to my boss at the time and make sure that like she'd be willing to bring on somebody who's got talent." Sure. This kind of more, they set it up kind of as like an entry level thing. And so he went to bat for me, and they brought me in for interviews, and the rest is kind of history at that point. I dove in, and I've never been happier in my life when my work has purpose and meaning, and something that's, I'm being the person I needed when I was a kid, and that's meaningful.
And she was awesome, the woman in charge at that time. I mean, you had some great mentors there in her leadership, as well as working with somebody like Tyler. I mean, he's if there's an Energizer bunny involved in a nonprofit, it's got to be him.
Absolutely. I agree. Like when we talked about privilege earlier, it comes in all shapes and forms. I've been lucky to have a brother who's been so involved in my life. I don't take the credit for the things that I do. I give that to him. I give that to the different mentors. I mean, Scott, you've been a mentor to me as well in the media world. I have benefited from being around incredible individuals. And I do say that I am smart enough, I guess, to see that pattern's out there where I can go to a professional and ask them for tutelage and learn from them and be humble and be willing to constantly like learn what they've learned and have them help me along the way.
Well, I'm excited to see where it takes you. We'll be back in a moment with more on Ozarks, Around the Ozarks Spotlight. And I'm your host, Scott Meyer, back in just a minute.
Hey, everybody, it's Ethan and Sarah Forhetz from your favorite podcast, Around the Ozarks in 5. I'm sure you've been wondering, how can I get even more amazing stories, events, and witty banter to start my day?
Well, look no further. Here we are. Sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll have what's going on around the Ozarks right at your fingertips each weekday morning.
Yeah, just go to aroundtheozarks.com, click on the newsletter tab to sign up.
Thanks for listening to Around the Ozarks in 5. We hope to see you in your inbox soon.
And welcome back to the second half of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meyer. With me, Rob Blevins, the executive director for the Discovery Centers. Now, we spent the first half of the show really getting to know Rob a little bit better. I thought that would be good for everybody to get a chance to understand, the person behind the picture. But it lets you know about his passion. And one of the things we really like on Spotlight is to have folks on that are passionate about what they do. You know, it's interesting. You were talking about majoring in writing at MSU. I was fortunate enough to have Nancy Allen on the program a couple of weeks ago, who's, a national author, born and raised right here in Springfield. She comes out of the prosecutor's office. What an amazing individual, but she also has classes over at MSU. And I told her, gosh, if I could turn back the hands of time, I would kill to have somebody like that as a writing mentor. I mean, she's so good. Let's talk about now what's going on with Discovery Center. When you went there and became the executive director, it was a very different place. And then all of a sudden, here comes the pandemic. Can you walk us through just a little bit of the changes when you started and where it is today? And I know that's going to take you some time. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, I'll try to go quickly with it. So came in and really started evaluating the financial situation at the Discovery Center and started making some decisions. Culture to me in a workplace is really important. Mm-hmm. It's what drives productivity. So my personal philosophy in life is finding the intersection of doing good and doing well. And it's a bit of an English pun or joke, I guess you could say. Sure. How are you doing today? Doing good. I'm like, really? Helping old women across the street. That's great. No, I'm having a good day. Oh, I see now. Okay, I get it. So I want to find something that's meaningful in life. I think that's been pretty clear through our first part of our interview today. But I also want to find success. I want for-profit businesses to succeed. And so when people work with us, I want them to make more money by having worked with us. Like we can promote their business for them. So find where that's sustainable, where you find that intersection of doing good and doing well. And so I think when you have a workforce that's happy and believes in themselves, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And they also perform better. So it's not this like, well, I have to be so hard on them to get performance out of them. It's like, well, you can do that by treating them really well. Like people can perform well when they're treated well. So we focused a lot on that. We started playing the great game of business, open book financial management, diving in, generating more revenue, cutting expenses where possible, but mostly generating new revenue, growing our revenue. Year over year, we've had I've been here 6 years now, double-digit revenue increases. From the time I started to now, our operating budget has grown by over 200% in the past 6 years. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing these incredible revenue jumps. But that started in 2018, right when I took on the position. And by the end of 2019, going into January, February, March of 2020, we were basically funding the operations of the Science Center through our gate, which is our general admission, birthday parties, memberships, that sort of revenue, field trips. We lump all that in and call it the gate. The bulk of our operations were being funded with that, and we were going to be starting to pursue just donors for the really cool stuff that we wanted to do. That's like the place to be as a science center, children's museum, or any museum. And then March of 2020 happened. I think, sorry to take everything. Yeah, everybody got returned to zero, right? Like you got didn't matter and so I had one of those, brief pity parties when I realized all this stuff was happening. I was like, it's not fair. We worked so hard to get this up to this point where, we got this, and all of it's just being wiped away. Well, you can only have pity so long and live off, right? So we had to come up with a plan. And, fortunately, I've got a team that is willing to listen to the community and then provide the community what it needs, because we're a nonprofit community funded science center. We don't exist if the community doesn't want us to exist. And so one of the things that happened is I was talking to the health department about all these different levels of attendance you're allowed to have. Like, you can only have 50 people in a gathering. And it went down to 10 or what, remember when all those
it's crazy.
levels were hitting. Finally, I asked, like, when do we close down? And they said, please don't close down. We don't want all the schools to close down and then the healthcare workers not have a place for their kids to go during the day, because then we won't be able to fight the pandemic anymore. They saw that up in upstate Washington, and I've been tracking history or museums in Washington State as well. So I understood what they were talking about. And I said, well, we'll take the kids. We got 60,000 square feet. We've got over 20 different summer camps we're about to, we were planning on offering that summer. We can use all those. So we opened up our doors. We ended up serving over 250,000 hours of free childcare, 50,000 free meals and snacks, and over 2,000 child enrollments through that process of what we called emergency childcare. And I could bore you with all the details. I could tell you all the stories about the ICU nurses that when they gave their kid a hug goodbye for the day, they held on tight, and it was a goodbye. Like, I might not see my kid again. I might die. I might not get to see him for 2 weeks because I have to go into a quarantine. That was the point of the pandemic where we were offering this childcare. When nobody else wanted these, vectors of contagion around them, our staff invited them in and took care of them.
That's what kids are being called. Vectors of what now?
Vectors of contagion.
Vectors of contagion. Oh my God, I'd not heard that before.
People were terrified of the virus being spread through kids. But they still, they are our future. They're the best part of us. They're way more valuable than I am. Yeah. And so, we did what we could to take care of them. Through that process in the fall, we actually opened up. Schools didn't return to full time. They only went back 2 days a week here at in Springfield Public Schools. The COVID slide was already happening. There were parents that were trying to make a decision. Do I let my 6-year-old be at home, or do I have a job and a roof for them? And they were leaving their 6 and 7-year-olds at home unsupervised for an entire workday because they had no choice.
Right.
Lots of people without resources do not have choices. And so we provided resources. We got the Everest College building and got it licensed to care for up to 300 kids a week, and took them in on the days that SPS wouldn't take them. So we did that. And then we also launched a school called the Discovery School, embedded in the Discovery Center. So through all of that, we actually got recognized through Forbes Media and the Center for Education Reform as the grand prize inaugural YOS prize winner. It's kind of like a Nobel Prize or something like that in education. Right. And it was for the best response to education during COVID. We won that out of the entire nation, came with $1 million, and fantastic opportunity to continue to grow our school and work with the best educators in the entire country. And we're continuing to do that. We actually recently got the school accredited. So it is both state and nationally accredited. We broke a record for getting that done in 8 months.
Now that's a big deal. Let's not gloss over that, Rob. That's, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the program was to talk about that a little bit. So you've gone from being helping to an accredited school.
Yeah, in 3 years.
That's
huge. Like basically a record. I've got an incredible team that worked tirelessly for 8 months on that. Like from start to finish, it took us 8 months, which usually it takes years. And I think the average is like 5 or 7 years, something like that, for getting accredited. But we did it so that we can help more kids and get access to Missouri Scholar funding. That was important to us. And, frankly, parents do ask the question during enrollment. It's not the right question to ask. You should ask what the academic attainment levels are in the school before you ask if it's accredited, because you can slap a label on anything. And if it's not quality, it's not quality. And So the real metric that you look at is grade level attainment, right? For schools, are kids learning at the pace that we've set as a state? Are they learning at that pace? And what we know is that schools all over the country are failing at that pretty miserably. So in Springfield, if you're a kid on free or reduced lunch in elementary school, only 1 out of 5 is going to be at grade level in reading and writing right now. 20% are at grade level. So 4 out of 5 poor kids in Springfield are not being met. They're not getting their educational needs met. If you look at the whole average, it's only in the 40s. Only 43%, I think, of kids in elementary school in Springfield are at grade level. So over half the kids were failing. We started out our school last school year with around 40% of our kids at grade level. That's the cohort that came in. By the end of the school year, our MAP testing showed that over 80% were at grade level in reading and writing. And we go pre-K through 8th grade. And our 8th graders, or those middle school kids, if you look at the whole percentage of our school, even over 20% of our kids were testing out of high school level. And we only go up to 8th grade. They were ready for college, essentially. And so we took a cohort that's pretty representative of the area, and we put them in these cohorts of 10 students, 1 teacher. So they get individualized learning plans where they get what they're ready to learn when they're ready to learn it. And they get to go at their own pace, and they get to take time on the hard stuff, and they get to keep going if they get it down pat easy, So we got kids that are in 3rd grade doing 6th grade math. That's awesome. That's great. They should be doing the math that challenges them. When they're not challenged, they have become behavioral problems, right? In classes, a lot of our behavioral problems in schools are because kids are all getting the exact same thing.
Rob, that kind of clashes, not to get political, because that's not what the show is for, but I can't help but read article after article where public schools have been dropping their expectations to meet the group, as opposed to raising expectations to allow those that like you say, get bored without being challenged. Why the difference? Why are you able to do those things and the public schools seem to be going in the wrong direction?
Well, I would absolutely argue that there is nothing. I know that everything gets politicized. Everything is on the table when it comes to politics, right? To get politicized. But when it comes down to it, it's completely objective. It's let's look and see what academic attainments are. Is the system working? Like any good business, are the dogs eating the dog food? Is this product actually successful? Like, well, let's look at our P&L. When you look at the P&L, we're failing kids, and there's nothing political about that. That is it's humanity, and we are failing them as humans. So the reason why we're able to do it differently is because we're doing things differently. When you look at the public school system, or some of the private schools actually follow the exact same model. So I'm not picking on a public school or private school, or again, it goes all back to the metrics. Schooling was set up in a couple of different ways, and it stayed that way. One of the ways is we wanted to assimilate, be the melting pot. Our schools were set up to be a melting pot, and so we keep parents out of the education system. And that's sad. That's not a thing we do. That's not a thing we allow in our school. The parent has to be part of the process. They have to buy into it, or we're not going to be successful. You need that relationship there. And then we set the kids up in a way where we're creating critical thinkers, not line workers. And that's how the schools were set up, is to create people that go and work at a company for 25 plus years and get a watch.
Rob, we're kind of running out of time here. I want to make sure that people understand a couple of things. If they want to get their child involved in Discovery Center's schooling, what do they need to do? www.discoverycenter.org/school. So discoverycenter.org/school. If we take ages 1 through 14, so that can actually start out as an infant through our early childhood center, and that's /preschool. Right now there's tuition requirements for that. We do have some scholarship funds available, but largely like tuition based, and it's not to make a profit off it. It's what the program costs. We actually have one of the lowest per pupil funded programs, and that's performing better than most everyone else around us. So it's as affordable as we can make it. And Discovery Center obviously is open and operating for business on a regular basis with inviting young people in.
Absolutely. We poured over $1 million into our facilities. We're getting ready to open up an outdoor play area this fall in our parking lot. It's like a inclusive playground sort of thing. We have dinosaurs coming, animatronic dinosaurs coming this fall. We have brand new exhibits. We have the Lou Interactive Digital Indoor Playground. It's a giant, fun wall where you throw soft dodgeballs against it, and it reacts to those things. So we have really cool stuff for all ages. If you haven't been since before the pandemic, it's time to rediscover the Discovery Center.
I want to thank my guest, Rob Blevins from the Discovery Center, for appearing today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Also, my producers, Taylor Worley and Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us today. If you happen to miss all or part of today's program, you can find it in its entirety on the MidwestFamilySpringfield.com website, the AroundTheOzarks.com site, or our new app for ATO, which can be found in Apple apps or Android apps, where you can also hear and view today's show as well as all the earlier shows this year and last. I want to thank you again, Rob, for being here. And I'm Scott Meyer. Remember, every day is a gift. Enjoy life. Have a good day.